Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers on the channel by the end of the year, so your subscription would be much appreciated. Also drop a like on this video. I almost went into a fucking loop there. Why would I say almost drop a like so I can get 100k? Those aren't really correlated, but they kind of are because dropping likes helps the video do better, so go do that. Anyways, this video is being released a day late because depression. I was in bed all day. A sad thing to joke about, but nevertheless true. Episode 9 of my Dallas Mavericks My NBA series is out now, so go watch that if you haven't already. But anyways, it's hot takes, let's get on with it. Ben Simmons is in the right in this whole ordeal. You know, I think this really all comes down to a matter of perspective. I think this is a situation that has a decent amount of nuance to it. I definitely leaned more in the Sixers' favor initially, but it becomes less a conversation of basketball and more a conversation of how business is done and the moral issues within business. And I think I could make, if I didn't feel like I'd already beat the Ben Simmons situation into the ground, like beat that dead horse relentlessly, I could almost make like a deep dive level thing on this where we're talking about the systems in which basketball and basketball business happens. From that perspective, it's really a conversation of, do you think the systems in which NBA players and the NBA currently operates are good and moral, or do you not? And if you don't, you're probably going to lean pretty heavily in the favor of Ben Simmons is in the right. But I don't want to go to a whole spiel there. It's interesting because I'm kind of in the middle on this subject where I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think the problems, the systems are immoral necessarily, but I also don't think they're the best, and I'm very pro player empowerment for that reason. But at the same time, I don't take that as far as like, for example, people saying Kyrie should be able to keep his money for his contract if he makes the choice not to play half of the season. Like, sorry, at that point you are choosing not to be an NBA player, so you don't get your NBA contract. I think that's pushing it a tad far, and I think there are a lot of people who are willing to push it that far. As for Ben Simmons being right, I think there's a degree of right and wrong on both sides there, so I'll just leave it at that. If his shooters stay healthy, Cat averages 6.5 plus assists per game next year. I think there is a decent amount of truth to this because Cat is actually low-key one of the best passing big men in the league. It's just his help has never been that great offensively, and I do think if not only his shooters are healthy, but he is healthy, there is definitely room for him to get to, like, I'd probably say 6. I don't know about 6.5 plus, but like 6 assists per game. He's been around 4.5 for most of his last couple of seasons anyways, so yeah, there's that. Nash peaked higher than Chris Paul. Defense. Michael Porter Jr. is extremely underrated. He is already top 30. He averaged 22 points per game on 69% true shooting in the second half of the season. He will become a 27 point per game scorer very soon and will eventually break out like Jason Tatum did in March of 2020. I do agree that MPJ and especially his offensive potential is a bit underrated, and a lot of people also frame that in a way that suggests that all MPJ is his offensive potential because he already is an unbelievable offensive talent. In terms of him being like, yeah, I do believe he can be a scoring champion one day. I think he can get into that conversation. I think his pairing with Jokic is just chef's kiss. As for him being underrated, I don't know about that, but I definitely think MPJ very, very good, and he's also going to go down as one of the best shooters in league history, and I don't know that people are quite aware of that yet. Paul George will be MVP. I've seen this brought up quite a bit. I mentioned it in my Clippers video, which go watch that if you didn't already on my main channel. I do believe there's definitely room for Paul George to get into the conversation. My whole thing is I just don't think the Clippers are going to win enough games, and it's as simple as that. Will he have an MVP type performance where he averages like 27, 28 a game, gets to like 5, 6 assists a game, is one of the best perimeter defenders in the league? Yeah. Is he going to win it though? I don't think so. Bringing up longevity as an advantage in all-time discussions for modern players is absurd. The amount of rehabilitative resources they have access to is not comparable to players from the past. Well, I think it's kind of a nuanced thing where yes and no, because like you look, there are players in the past who are like Iron Men. didn't get hurt much at all. Michael Jordan only had one major injury in his career. As much as I hate even bringing up the existence of him, Karl Malone was like never fucking injured. John Stockton was like almost never fucking injured. So it's not as though that's something that doesn't exist. If you want to talk long-term wear and tear, sure. But I do agree to some extent, like, it's hard to compare, but at the same time, it's not something that just disappears. And it's not as though, you know, LeBron James was an indestructible player from as soon as he was drafted, and he was drafted the year after Michael Jordan retired. So, I think there is room to do it, but at the same time, I'm also not someone who values longevity that crazy. So I don't know. I think the best way to look at who's a better all-time talent anyways, not necessarily an all-time ranking player, is just what they did in their peak, and that peak was a long enough time that it's not a fluke. But at the same time, you know, longevity is something, and regardless of the technological advancements that affect how that works with modern basketball or not, it's still something that has to be accounted for. You could make the argument of like technology and stuff has changed for the betterment of players' ability at everything. So I don't really think that longevity is where you would stop that conversation if you're going to be stopping it somewhere. Wiggins would be a better fit on the Sixers than Ben Simmons would be on the Warriors. I don't know why that trade would happen for Golden State. For what it's worth, this was shot these screenshots were taken like 2 weeks ago, and this is, I don't know, I feel like this is less brought up now. Well, sure, Wiggins would fit better because a player who is a 3-and-D guy kind of just fits anywhere better than a player. Like, there are players that are a lot better than Andrew Wiggins that won't necessarily fit better. Like, Klay Thompson fits better on teams than prime Russell Westbrook would fit on a team. Doesn't mean he's better. So that's a different thing. As for the Ben Simmons thing, I do agree that's a horrible fit. I never liked that idea unless they were trading Draymond Green, and I don't think you should trade Draymond Green because even if Ben Simmons is arguably better than Draymond Green, which I don't even know that I'd say that he is, that chemistry matters, and Draymond is such an integral part of the Warriors' success previous that I think throwing him to the curb for Ben Simmons would not really be beneficial to the team. So, yeah. LaMelo is going to be a top 10 point guard by the end of this season. I mean, yeah, that's completely within the realm of possibility. And my top 10 point guards list that I put out, I believe he was like just in the outskirts, like 11 or 12 or something like that. So yeah, I definitely think that is possible, and I'd even lean towards probably going to happen. The Magic have one of the best young cores right now. I don't know that I'd say best. It's interesting. Wendell Carter is solid. Jonathan Isaac is really good defensively. Jalen Suggs, I think, can be really good. Cole Anthony was pretty good last year. And Markelle Fultz, when he's healthy, seems like he's taken strides in his game and will actually be a good NBA player. But at the same time, I mean, outside of that, there's like Chuma Okeke, who shows signs of being interesting and I think could be a good NBA player. Like, there's a lot of role players that exist on the Magic. Other than Suggs and maybe Cole Anthony and maybe Markelle Fultz and maybe Chuma just becomes something well without of what I expect. I'm just seeing a lot of role players here, more or less, so that's why I would lean towards probably not. Although in terms of other young cores, like it feels like there's less young cores in the NBA now. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like there's less like, oh yeah, glaringly obvious. It feels like a young core because at the same time, like DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker are still really young. Mikal Bridges is still really young. It's just they went to the finals last year, so they don't feel like a young core anymore. They just feel like a core, even though they're young. None of this makes sense, but like, up-and-coming team-wise and a young talent-wise, I do not know that I would say that the Magic have one of the best. I don't think they're the worst, but I don't know about the best. The Nets' big three will not win a title because they can't stay healthy. Well, first of all, we don't even know if it's a big three anymore because Kyrie might miss a shit ton of games by his own volition, but then there's also the players missing games because they are injury prone. So I do agree to an extent that that is the biggest concern with the Brooklyn Nets, and that's really the asterisk that you have to put next to the Nets, is they have the talent to win the championship, but at the same time, there are a lot of teams with a lot of players that are kind of injury prone, and you don't really put this same asterisk on them. So like, I feel like we should just go into these conversations pretty much all the time where we're like, barring injuries being a factor, this is who wins the championship. And that's what I said in my video on why the Nets are pretty much unbeatable. Like, yeah, if they get injured, they're beatable. But if they don't, You're not stopping this team. So that's sure you're wrong. You're not wrong, but I don't feel like it's really necessary to bring that up because it's kind of obvious. So yeah, that was it. That was hot takes. Goodbye.